Greetings, my beautiful angels, and welcome to another episode of Soul Healing Summit 1. Today, we have Daryl Hill as our guest, who's a former major in US Marines and nicknamed the Hammer by his clients because he shatters the metal blocks that keeps them from greatness. Daryl is also the creator of DART process, which was uniquely developed after 10,000 hours of mind mastery work with entrepreneurial PTSD, trauma victims, and PTSD veterans. Daryl Hill is also a member of my soul family, and he was the very person who introduced me to NLP for the first time. And maybe we'll get to share some of that. Such a pleasure and honor to have you on this summit.
Honestly, I had a little bit of a rough day today. My mom being in the hospital and stuff like that, and just seeing her, that was tough. When you love somebody so much and you see somebody that you want to help so badly, and you try to give them help and guide them, but they just don't want to take it because they're still like overrun with these addictions that have cost them years off their life, cost them their health. And so it's been a tough day, and seeing that and seeing people that you love. And I know, Veronica, you're no different. It's like we want to help people. You want to help guide them, right? And shepherd them on like the flock that we all are. It was rough kind of seeing that today. I always like to be honest when people ask me that question about they ask me how I'm doing. Actually tell them the truth.
It's the European way when you ask somebody in Europe, like, how are you doing? They actually tell you exactly what's going on. They don't like,
Yeah.
I feel good.
Most of the time in America, it's like, yeah, I'm doing fine. Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard the translation of fine one time. I'm not going to repeat it on this summit. It's not-
That's when you
but-
know you're in trouble as a guy and you hear a woman say, I'm fine. Just brace
Ooh.
yourself for impact. So,
Oh, on that note, it's been coming up quite a bit because a lot of light workers and healers and coaches, we come across these amazing tools that are so life transformative. But for some reason, people that are closest to us, our family members, they refuse to see the essence and the beauty and the amazingness of what this can offer. And it is really tough to watch. And it happened to be one of those days for you, Daryl. Aside from days like this, I want to hear how those who are open to your gift and which you've shared with have impacted their lives by using your work and by using specifically the DART process.
I'll just start out with you. We got a chance to meet, and I was able to kind of intuitively pick up on that you're afraid of heights pretty quickly. And why don't you share your story?
Oh, yes. So it was years ago. I think we were in the cruise, and I remember looking down and I screamed because it was so high. I had this crazy fear of heights. And I couldn't look down. And Daryl was like, "Do you want me to fix that?" I'm like, "What do you mean fix that?" And by that point, you have to understand, like I was at my level of cockiness. I'm like, I've read all the self-help books and this and that. Like I've mastered this, right? I had the knowledge. I'm like, what can you possibly do to clear somebody's fear of heights? This just sounds like magic. So he's just like, close your eyes and simply listen to my voice. So I closed my eyes and I simply listened to the voice. I was aware the whole time. I heard every single word. And when I opened my eyes and I looked down, the fear is gone. And I was perplexed and I'm like, did I just take something? How is this possible? And that's when everything opened up for me specifically. I'm like, okay, if you can clear that, what else can you clear? Does that mean that I can go back in time and begin rewriting literally every part of my childhood, every part of that perception that is holding me down? And thanks to Daryl, now I get to do what I do.
And people ask me, well, does it stick? And I always say, I've got a money back guarantee in the sense you ever have a problem again, you can call me back. Except I never get any phone calls back. I think it was later in the year Veronica actually was in Paris when she was doing almost like a one hand stand or something over like in the backdrop, she could fall like 10 stories down or something there. You remember that? You got a
Yeah, I do
picture of that.
remember, and I have the same pictures. Like I'll do the bird of paradise or some yoga pose on the edge of a cliff, and I'm like, okay, that's too much, too much confidence at this point. But
So I should have
definitely, the
dialed
fear
that
of
back a
heights
little
is
bit for
gone.
her. Should have left a little bit of fear in there. We got rid of everything. So
Okay, yeah, we got to bring some back because I remember using the same technique to one of my clients that wanted to. I was drinking wine. It's like I want to clear the addiction of wine. So then we replaced the wine with something that she really didn't like, which was ketchup.
Mm,
And now every time she would see a bottle of wine, she wanted to throw up because she would see the same, she would get the same result as a ketchup. I was like, can you tone that down a little bit? Because I don't want to feel nauseous every time I see wine.
this is very true.
Yeah, it's really, really transformative. I want to hear because you're a former US Marines and we don't have anybody on the summit who comes from that background. And I want to hear from you speaking on behalf of everybody that has been in the military, because that is not easy transition to come from that world and come back to the normal life and act like nothing ever happened. Like, how is that transition for you? And how did this work help you in that transition?
I'd say this work I got a chance to do was the difference maker with a lot of things in my life. I came from the military, was in the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps is probably the worst at reaching out to get help from people. And when I left the Marine Corps, I tried to get some help after a couple of years, kind of struggling a little bit with some survivor's guilt that I had. I ended up losing 25 friends of mine, Marines that I served with, Marines I served under me, mentors of mine, also some friends of mine from the SEAL community to combat, and suicide. And it was one of those things where it really left a mark on me. I was like, didn't realize I was kind of wrestling with that a little bit until I talked with another Navy SEAL, shared with me his story about he actually lost a lot of guys. And I related. He's like, wow, I feel the same thing. He's like, yeah, you have survivor's guilt. And he didn't recognize that in himself. I think it was over 20 years until a general pulled him aside after he told his story and said, hey, you should go get help for that. And he went and got help for that. And then he was helping me kind of realize that I had something going on with me and it was okay to actually go out to ask for help. So here was, big badass Navy SEAL guy, went and got help himself and did the same work I eventually did when I met my mentor, Tom, who actually took me through the process that he had learned to help other people. And I think that was one of the things, just letting other guys know it's okay to reach out for help, letting them know that it's the invisible scars that are a lot of times the worst scars and the battle injuries and stuff like that you can't actually see are the ones that keep people up at nighttime or, get their anxiety running high or get their tempers flaring. That definitely plays a factor. But I'd say a lot of guys, it was something like 60%. If you look at, numbers wise, probably about 60% of the military has some kind of trauma related stuff, PTSD related stuff, even before they get into the military. Some of the times people get into the military because they have this calling of like, they want to be a defender. And especially in the Marines, we definitely want to be defenders. We definitely want to save people, definitely have that, a little bit of that complex per se, like we want to be the best at whatever we do. And if you ask the Marines who's the best branch, we're going to say the Marines. The other guys, I'm sure they'll say what they do, but we'll always say we're better than them. But that's just, some of it's bravado, some of it's confidence, and a lot of it's the truth. So,
A
uh,
lot of it is the truth.
yeah. But it's just one of those things where I'd say definitely coming out of the military, you leave this family, leave an environment, and you've been in this environment in this bubble for years on end, and all of a sudden you leave and you find yourself amongst just people that don't have the same values that you were, driven into your mind all the way from boot camp, and whether it's OCS or ICS or the Naval Academy or wherever you went, you're drilled in all these values. And when you leave out of the military, you automatically kind of expect the rest of the world has these values. And a lot of times they don't. You find that out really quickly. And all of a sudden you maybe get your feelings hurt, or you get lied to, or you get your heart broken, and, things don't happen that, not to say those things don't happen in the military, but, in the military, it's very much a controlled environment, a environment where you have to trust the guy to the left and right of you without question. Otherwise you could die. So I think when you get out to the outside of the military, we call it like the first civ div in the Marine Corps. That's kind of what we call civilian, right? So as guys actually leave and exit out of there, and then they grow the beard, a couple years down the road, they're not in as good a shape anymore. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, that guy used to be in the Marines. Well, the Marine is still in that guy, but the environment has taken over on the outside. He's now amongst other people that they're not working out as much. Versus like when you show up to work in the Marine Corps, if you're looking out of shape or something like that, then we're going to work you out. There's not going to be a question. But in civilian world, the discipline isn't there anymore. The discipline to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym or go on a hike, or you're out there doing something, whatever it is. So I would say just one of the biggest things leaving out of the military is the environment. and also the mental side of that goes with it. So you get around other people that possibly aren't running at the same capacity. They're not pushing themselves as hard and stuff like that. So that's something to become aware of as well when you're leaving out of any environment. It could be a school environment, maybe you're with a special team. A lot of times people go on like retreats and they have a great time because they're bonding with people with the same values, right? They're doing the same activities. And then they leave out of that and they go back to their house or go back to their environment, back to their family. And you've got these external factors that are out there that weren't actually factored in when they were in that environment they were in previously.
Mm.
So that's something to really take consideration across the board. So just being conscious of the environment you're in, the people you surround yourself with, what's on your phone. Your phone is another environment, your iPhone or your smartphone or whatever you got, what apps you have on there, what notifications are dinging you all day long and trying to get your attention, right? So just be conscious constantly of your environment. And that's something that I've definitely become more conscious with. I read something again today. It's like your peace is priceless, right? And if something's destroying your peace and it's keeping you from, achieving your goals and where you should actually be in life, then that needs to exit like now. So not tomorrow, not next week. It's like, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a person, let them know, hey, listen, if you can get your stuff together and not violate my boundaries and not actually do these things you're doing, then maybe we can actually have a relationship together, right? Or if it's an employee type setting, if somebody's like violating that boundary, not doing something right, you sit down and counsel the person. And if they do it again, it's like, hey, slow to hire, fire fast, basically, because you can't let that fester in your work environment as well. So I just become very, very much a pruner of my environment where I cut the stuff out really quickly because your piece is worth, it's priceless. So,
Very profound. And I want to reiterate what Daryl said one more time because our environment can actually affect us up to 90%. And if you're not relentless about what you allow in, what information, what people, what circumstances you allow in your life, very soon you become it. So let that sink in with you. And if you want to pause this video and take a look at all your relationships and things that you allow in your life, you're like, okay, this needs to go, this needs to go, this needs to go, this needs to go, right? Because if it's painful, that means you're not in your right environment. One thing that I want to ask you, because life does happen, right? We can't just build a little castle and only bring in people that we like and only do things that we like, right? Life happens. We intermingle with so many other people. We travel, we do this. What are the best tools that you use in a moment of chaos?
so one of the biggest things, and from the NLP world, we call it like chunking, right? It's something that Milton Erickson talks about is you always want to chunk up on something to get alignment. So if I said to Veronica, I was like, Veronica, do you want to have the best summit ever? And she's going to be like, yes, right? So it's like
Yes.
chunking up to get that agreement, right? And then coming back down on whatever it is that's the overall issue that needs to be addressed. So I'd say just getting a quick agreement from somebody that you're moving in the right direction. Like, for example, let's say it's you and your wife and you're arguing about something, and you can be like, listen, honey, we love each other, right? And you want to get that agreement because if there's not that there, then what are you doing? Right. And if there's not that there, you need to find out why really quickly. Because if that's not the case, then you're going to be getting divorced. Because if there's not love in the tank, then what are you going to do? Again, get that agreement, whatever it is, top line side of things, and you can chunk back down to like, okay, what happened from we love each other this much to now we're fighting? Like, why, what triggered? What was the problem there? And address that at that point. But a lot of times, if people are just still at the level where they're fighting because they've got their beliefs and this person's got their belief of what happened, and all of a sudden they're going back and forth, it's like they're fighting back and forth like this, right? Instead of actually, it's like, hey, let's get an agreement. Let's come back down here. Where do we have misalignment? And let's address that misalignment so the person feels heard.
A lot of times you're not even speaking the same language because we use different terminology. Some people are kinesthetic, others are visual. And you're not even speaking the same language. You're not able to hear each other. So that is another part of NLP that is very, very important to address. Would you like to speak about that?
Yeah. And I would say on the language side of things, what Veronica's addressing is there's typically four different types there. We have, kinesthetic people or big lovers and huggers. That's me, right? And they have very visual people are put together like Veronica over here, right? Right. And then you've got audio people, which are very much like talkers, and they're just talk, talk, talk. And then you got the auditory digital person, which probably doesn't say as much, but is always thinking. And they're very systematic when they're talking about something. Like they're talking in steps, as if they were solving a math equation. This is step 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, on down the line. It's important as well when you're communicating with somebody that you understand like how it is that they communicate, so you can kind of speak into their communication more so they feel heard. If I'm going to do that with Veronica now, I said, Veronica, what is it that was bothering you yesterday? And then you just throw something out at me, right?
What was bothering me yesterday? Oh, I
Yeah.
couldn't hold the food down. I had food poisoning.
Okay, we had some food poisoning, right? So Veronica, I'm hearing yesterday you had some food poisoning, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else about that that you want to talk about with me?
Lost half of myself, I guess the weight.
And
So
Veronica got this much
I don't
smaller. She
look my
went from this
usual.
small to now she's this small, right?
I'm like a quarter of a person I used to know.
I'm hearing you lost a quarter of your person. So is that
Something like of the physical part, yes.
how do you want to address that? How do you want help with that?
Time heals, and when the body is ready for food, they will come back.
Awesome. So anything I can do to help you with that?
Anything that you can do to help with that. I guess the best medicine is loving, so simply send love to my belly and that will settle in.
Sending love to your belly. There you go.
There you go.
But it's just a simple process like that. Veronica, did you feel heard when I was having a conversation with you just now?
Yes.
Yeah. Again, it's not me throwing up on you. First of all, it's just allowing the person to feel validated because they feel heard. And if somebody's in an upset state, a lot of times they're going to want to talk, talk, talk a lot. You have to preference that when you start talking. It's like, hey, can you just give me a little bit at a time? We can address one thing at a time. Because sometimes people just like will throw up and they're bringing their lunch and last week's lunch and they're just all over, right? And it gets ugly. And you're like, I don't even know what we were talking about all of a sudden. Yeah, who's been in an argument? They don't know what they were talking about, right? Raise your hand out there, right? So all of a sudden
Nobody.
it's like, why are we fighting again? Why do we get here? How do we get here? And then the person just threw up everything. They're just upset. They might feel a little bit good, maybe just a little bit, but they're not going to feel heard because I can't remember they just had like 10, 15 different things. So it's important when you're having a discussion like that, that we just address like one thing at a time, work through that. So people felt heard, they felt understood. There's some kind of actionable steps around that. If there's forgiveness that needs to take place, you address that then as well, right up front. Say, I feel sorry about this. I didn't realize that was so much a thing for you. Also, setting boundaries with people too is like super important by letting people actually know possibly triggers and boundaries that you have, because maybe it's something that happened in the past to you. Maybe you're a little sensitive towards that. There's been instances where you address somebody by their name, it might trigger them. Or maybe you just kind of laugh and you're not even laughing at somebody and all of a sudden it triggers them, right? There's been all kind of different things that happen where you're just being yourself all of a sudden, having fun, and all of a sudden they get triggered and you're just looking at yourself like, well, what did I do? Because people actually bring stuff from past relationships into their current ones a lot of times because they've never actually let go of the trauma. And those should be like trauma triggers. Those are things literally that once you realize that, like, oh, I just got triggered, stop, take a deep breath, work through your process, right? And all the stuff that like Ronica and I do with people, helping people work through that process on the mental side of things. That's what like the meditations are for. So I'd say if somebody like anytime they're listening to one of the meditations that we create, it's like you can listen to it over and over again because every time your mind listens to it, it's going to work on something else.
One of the questions I want to ask is that you have this amazing programs on finding your soulmates and you've done a lot of workshops on that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And how did you move into necessarily doing NLP to clear the mental blocks into relationships and finding your love?
All right. So here's the deal, right? A lot of the reason that people like Veronica and I get into work like this is because we had to deal with massive amounts of stuff, our own trauma we've kind of gone through, right or wrong, Veronica.
Very correct. Yes.
Really correct, right? Okay, so I had a lot of trauma growing up as a kid. Parents got divorced at a young age. Started my therapy career, I think I was 10. So where I was in the chair and I was listening to somebody else for a while, and it was helpful, not really, because I was dealing constantly with the conscious mind side of things. But at that age, you don't know anything, right? You just kind of go and you throw up on the couch and talk about your issues and stuff. And for me personally, it wasn't that effective. And then as an adult, I found myself doing it again after I left out of the military. And then it wasn't really helpful. And then I came across working with Tom Cavanaugh, who has now actually mentored me and also mentored Veronica to get her started on like her career with this. And he was a life changer for me. The guy was amazing, great teacher. I went from never doing any of this kind of work before to like I left Tom's workshop and there was a guy in front of me at the airport. And I've always been very intuitive with people. I've now been told by Kelly Fox, who's one of the best astrologers in the world. And she's like, do you know you're intuitive empath psychic, right? I just pick up on stuff and I pick on people's think of it at the time. And there's so many times that people would actually come into my office when I was in the Marines, even still, and they would tell me all their deepest, darkest secrets and all the issues they were having. And I didn't even ask them to do it. They would just come in and sit on my couch there in the office and they would just let go. And then they would leave and it's like, I feel better. I'm like, good. And they would tell me always, I've never told any of this before in my life, any of the information they just shared with me. And for years and years and years, I was just like, yeah, okay. I like everybody says that. And then one day I stopped somebody and I said, are you telling the truth? Like you've never told anybody that before? I'm just curious because I have a lot of people say that. And the person's like, yeah, I wouldn't say that otherwise. And it was really at that point where it just kind of like hit me where I was like, wow, all these people, all these years have been telling me all this stuff because there's like a certain like safety, I guess, that people feel around me. And it's just how big my heart is. I want to extend that heart to anybody who's listening to this to let them know that there actually are people out there that care about you. And I'm one of them, and Veronica's one of them. And she's got a lot of people in her tribe that want to help you and serve you. And they're not looking for anything in return either. My biggest thing is the reason we have to actually charge for programs is because otherwise people won't do them. I've given away so much free stuff and then nobody does it. So I just did somebody a disservice basically by not helping them because I gave them something for free. I don't know how many times, Veronica, have you give somebody a free session or you give somebody free something and then they don't bother doing it. They don't bother listening to the meditation. The same thing that people pay thousands of dollars for, they just disregard it. Has that ever happened to you?
Everything has to be an exchange of value. So unless you're invested in monetarily, time wise, energetic wise, you're not going to appreciate it. That's with everything, right? If we don't invest in a relationship, that's not going to grow. So absolutely. What's easy to get is easy to forget.
That's very true. And I find that interesting about books too. Because you think about these authors and they sit down and they spent all this time writing just books, like 300 pages, and they pour all their best stuff in this book. And then they sell them on the internet for $10 at a pop. And then people buy it and they just put it on the bookshelf and think it looks nice. It's like shelf help, right? It's not going to work unless you actually read it and apply it. So I'd like to welcome everybody who has some of that on their shelf, me included, right? To sit down and pull some of those books on there, spend some time on yourself, like sharpen that mind. People talk about sharpening the saw, right? Sharpen that mind that you got there. Allow that mind to take you to the next level.
Allow your mind to take you to the next level and allow your heart to lead. How easy was it for you to incorporate your heart and your mind or find a marriage between the two because of the transition and the upbringing that you've had?
You know, it's interesting. I was kind of forced into it. I went through a divorce. And during that time, I was actually just entering this type of work where I was learning it, working with Tom and stuff. And he was there actually to help guide me a little bit through that. So I'm eternally grateful to him. And during that time, I found myself getting so involved because I spent so much time on learning about business, learning about marketing, and learning about all these other things. But I had never focused on relationship stuff. And I don't still consider myself a relationship expert. I've just read like hundreds of books on this stuff now and read a bunch of courses and got a bunch of people pregnant, not me personally, right? But they got pregnant after they went through the courses and workshops. I get some crazy emails from people. It was really cool. This lady sent me this email. She's like, I got out of this terrible relationship with this guy who was like a murderer. And I took your course as a last resort. And now I'm pregnant and I've got the man of my life. And I'm actually just contacting you because I lost my login. But I was afraid if I don't keep listening that I won't have my awesome success again. I'm like, I just got on the phone with this lady. I was like, you're for real and all this stuff? She's like, yeah. And she's like, and I'm actually talking to you. I'm like, yeah, this is me. I was like, call me anytime. It's like, so it's just funny. I love helping people and hearing some of the stories. And I was just having a crappy day that day and like literally just brought tears to my face. And I was just, oh my God. I was like, you have no idea. I needed that. Thank you so much, universe, for sending that person into my inbox. I had to go through that myself, and did all that research and learning. And talking to my coaches. I kind of talked about Anthony Hopkins in the sense of, here's a guy who's a world-class actor, and he was being interviewed, and they asked him, "Hey, Anthony, I heard you have a coach. Why do you need a coach? You're like, won all these Academy Awards, you're like one of the best actors on the planet ever." And he looks at him, he's like, "No, no, you stand corrected. Stand corrected, in a polite way." He said it. He said, "I have 5 coaches who are all acting coaches just for me." He's like, "I have one for this, one for that." And that's where I would, ask yourself right now, who's coaching you? Are you doing life by yourself right now? Right? Are you where you want to be at in life? And if you're not, find a coach. And a coach can be a book that you pick up and start reading, right? Or maybe it's somebody like Veronica who you're going to listen to and allow her guide you on your journey. Or it's maybe you resonate with something I'm actually saying. You're like, what, I want to talk to this Daryl Hill guy. Maybe he could help me out. I was doing a webinar, something like this, and we had a live audience. And this guy's listening to me talk. And he reached out in the chat and he said, "I'm in a tornado right now, but I want to get your program. I want help." And I was just I'm typing back to him. I'm like, "Hey, everybody, give me a second here." I was typing back to this guy, Chuck. I'm like, "Hey, Chuck." I was like, "No problem." I was like, "Here's my number. Just go get in shelter, please. Let's talk tomorrow, like after the tornado." Like literally had a tornado outside his house, right? And then so Chuck messaged me the next day. I was like, "Were you really in a tornado?" He's like, "Yeah." Like, and I look on the news, and sure enough, like his whole town in Texas is all torn up or whatever. Chuck resonated with something I said. He then connected me with another Marine who is suffering from PTSD. And this is how, the universe works. And this is called manifestations and putting stuff out there. But I had this Marine who actually I talked on the phone, and he actually was suicidal. He was actually in a buddy of mine that I played football with that died at the Naval Academy. He was one of his Marines, and he died next to him. And that's actually the reason he had PTSD. From a friend of mine that I buried some like almost, I think it was 10 years prior. The reason he had PTSD was because my friend died next to him and he couldn't save him. And just be able to get a chance to work with him. And if all the universe put that into my way, and I was able to work with him, allow him to release, the demons that were inside of him that was holding him back, and to see the change in his life. Because when he went home and he actually got with Chuck and his mom, and they called me on the phone and they were in tears because they're like, "Oh my God, you gave us our son back." The guy was emancipated. He had not lost a quarter of himself, Ronick. He probably lost like 75% of himself. Like he looked horrible. And he went right to the VA the next day. They checked him in, his life changed, and he went back to school. He got his life on track. He had a son to live for.
Isn't that interesting? When we create medicine for ourselves, we realize that not only others, but hundreds, thousands, and millions of other people are looking for the same medicine. And then life becomes magical because what is good for you can also be good for so many others. And if this story is not inspiring for you, then I don't know what is. Anything that you've been through, every hardship, every time you had to pick your heart up and put it all together and pick the pieces from the floor and build yourself up, you have built a skill that now you get to create and share with others. And that's a superpower that you already have that nobody can ever take away from you. Life throws all kinds of curveballs at us. And our goal is to find those tools, to find those avenues to stay in balance. What is your favorite hack, Daryl, that keeps you on point every single day, that gets you to drive, that gets you to wake up in the morning and say, you know what? Not only am I going to do this again, but I'm excited, I'm eager, and I'm ready.
I'd say when, people talk about wasting time on Facebook and scrolling and stuff like that. And a lot of times I get inspiration because I just kind of scroll through and I'll see my clients. And one of my favorite clients is a girl I went to high school with, and I shared the story a lot because it's really impacted me. And to see her going from 20 years dating the wrong men, always ended up with non-committal type relationships, and then bam, I spent a few days with her, and she figures out what that block was for. And she was able to break through that, like with the hammer, like we talked about, and to leave that in the past. And she was able to go find for her the man of her dreams and the man that married her within a year. They got married, and then we're told they couldn't have a child, and miraculously she manifested a child. And now seeing that child be like, he's like 4 years old now, and just gets me fired up when I see stuff like that. It makes me really excited, honestly, and I feel like I made a difference in somebody's life. It's like that starfish when you're walking down the beach and there's 1,000 starfish, and the little kid throws the one back in the water, and the person says, "Well, why did you do that?" He's like, "Doesn't make a difference." He's like, "Well, it made a difference for that starfish." And every day when you get a chance to like make a difference in somebody's life, they're going to remember you for the rest of their lives. And that's the beautiful thing that drives me to create more meditations, to reach out to people, and to work with people like Veronica here who want to do good by people. So that's what drives me.
So beautifully said. Would you please take us on a beautiful meditative journey so we get to taste the flavor of your medicine for those people out there who are looking for soulmates, who are looking to open up their heart to love?
Absolutely. We're going to do a little meditation today. And it's something that's been on my heart because there's a lot of people out there who have been hurt in the past by somebody, or maybe they hurt somebody that they loved, and they've almost created like an energetic block between that person and their soulmate. And if those energetic blocks aren't actually broken, then you continue to run the same pattern over and over again. You'll continue to track that same person over and over again, or possibly you want to break that block between you and that person. So there's a certain process we're going to go through and actually do. So I'd like you to put your trade tables up, strap in. I'm going to put my headphones on, and we're going to drop in and go out to outer space over here. So,
Wow, my entire body, it's like has this numbness sensation. It went so deep and my heart is filled with love. Ooh. It's interesting how your voice changes completely, like it goes in this hypnagogic state. It's like instant. It's beautiful medicine. Thank you for sharing your gift with us, with the world, and answering the call. In conclusion, before we end this beautiful journey, is there anything that you want to say to those people out there who are searching for love, who have been hurt a million times, and it's so scary for them to open up? What would you say to them?
The key is inside themselves, first by loving themselves, by going out and forgiving the past, by letting go, allowing yourself to have love in your life, realizing that you are worthy of love. And if there's somebody there that's keeping that from you, let them know who you really are. Let them know you are loved. Let them know when they come at you with anger or frustration or other forms of energy, just take a nice deep breath and go into that love state. Because realize they're basically just projecting how it is that they feel and how they've been hurt and the sadness they have inside themselves. And it has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. Some of these individuals, you might just want to love to pieces, but you might not be ready for it. Just you also have to accept that as well. And if you love yourself, set your vision about what it is that love's going to be in your life. Put your blinders on and do not accept anything less than that.
Hmm. Beautiful words of wisdom. Love yourself first. As you love and accept everything about you, you begin to see others in the world through the same lenses. And it all begins with you. What a beautiful journey. What a beautiful time together. Thank you so much, Daryl. It's been such a pleasure, such an honor. I do have to say this. Daryl is the person who pushed me to record my first meditation. He literally, before I even done any meditation or was open to any of it, he placed the recorder in my hand and said, "Go ahead and do it." And I'm like, I don't even know what meditations are. And he said to me, "I know a Jedi when I see one." And thanks to Daryl, I get to share my work with the world. And I am forever grateful for planting that seed on my path and being that soul family member and kicking my butt when I wasn't ready to jump. And thank you for seeing the same thing you do in every single one of your clients and every single person that you work with and you touch. You see the greatness in them before they get to see it in themselves. And then you help them retune their mind, reprogram their mind, clear those blocks to shine through and show the world which you actually see in them. And I always say, before you're ready to see yourself, find a mentor, find somebody that speaks your language and see yourself through their eyes before you're ready to open up yours to your own greatness. What a beautiful journey. Thank you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Veronica. Namaste.
Namaste.